are someone who's clicking on this video because a lot of times you feel like, oh, this younger generation just gets kind of like stuck in counseling. I hope this maybe like unveils the reason why. I think especially for these kind of like more complex traumas, they do take a really long time to heal. And I think that's why they're called mental health journeys, right? They take a really long time. They take your whole life. Ooh, they're lifelong journeys. So if you're clicking on this because you know people and you're like wanting to understand it better, amazing. One, I hope this just kind of like sheds a bit more light on it. And if you are clicking on this because you want to feel less alone, I hope this does that today. So welcome to the crazy reality of mental health journeys. Thought of how much milk is in a latte. We make it iced. It feels really apparent. If you just clicked on this video and you have no idea who I am, my name is Jordy, and I spent the last decade healing an immunocompromisation that we, 5 years into that healing, discovered was actually tied to my CPTSD, so complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and developmental trauma. So essentially I've spent the better part of a decade healing my body, and then the last 5 years on a mental health journey. I wanted to talk about what that feels like, and then also talk about a couple of the things that have helped me specifically navigate the mayhem. And so that's what we're going to dig into today. I'm going to draw your mental health journey is, I want to say, propose to you today, a spiraling path upwards, like that. If you want to picture yourself spiraling around something, you could also say you're like spiraling around a mountain, but your mental health journey is a spiraling path upward. It's probably a lot bigger than this. Most mental health journeys last your entire life. So if the bottom is like when you actually got started, the top would be continuous, you know, like you're always going to be working on this. And I think a lot of people are starting to understand that mental health growths are not linear, right? They're not like a straight line. They're not a straight line upwards. You don't like start counseling here and then it's like straight upwards until you're like, I don't need this anymore, goodbye. Because we're humans, like we're going through experiences while we're doing this work. Especially if you have something similar to what I have experienced, all of that is so relational. Then as a human, it's not like you go off to an island to start this mental health journey. You're still experiencing relationships. You're still going through different developments, going through different life stages. That's why in so many counseling sessions, you might be working on one thing and then something happens and you go, hi, I need to talk about this because this made me understand this aspect of my trauma, or this brought up a whole new thing. And that's why it can honestly feel like such a lifelong journey and why it doesn't feel like this straight line. But I think sometimes people will say like, I'll come back to the spiral in a second. Oh, so it's like a roller coaster. It's just up, down like this. And these are the peaks and these are the valleys. And it's full of peaks and valleys. And it's like, yeah, but for me, that still implies there's an end. Like the roller coaster ride comes to an end at some point. And when you're going, I've been in therapy for 5 years and I still do not see an end in sight. Like I take moments off sometimes, like where I'm feeling really good, and then I became a mom and was like, SOS help, like this is flaring up a lot of different things. Or a relationship comes into your life and you're like, and you're emailing your therapist asking if they have availability. And I love this spiral analogy, and I'll tell you why. It kind of implies like, one, we're kind of gonna go through these like dark phases, but even more than that, like a spiral upwards like this is like really slow progress, like you're really slowly going upwards. And when you come out to the front, so let's say you started like here, when you come out to the front, so you underwent this entire spiral and you're doing such good work in therapy, and maybe you just like went through something, or you had a relapse, or you like uncovered a bunch of new stuff. You like started therapy for general anxiety, and all of a sudden like you're talking about yourself when you were 8 and you're realizing how much that has impacted everything, and you're going, this is going to take way longer than I thought, and you're doing such good work. When you come here, you're like, I'm sorry. The view from here looks exactly the same as the view from here. And you're going, I just spent a year in therapy, or I just spent 6 months, or I just spent however long. And these things that have plagued me my entire life are still plaguing me. And I don't understand. It must not be working. This therapist is a crook. This whole thing is a lie. But what you don't realize is you're a little bit higher on that spiral. My therapist told me this really early on in my journey with her, and I have thought about it so often because I think there are times, like even for me in the last year, I mentioned in my first video, I talk about how I went to start a YouTube video and then I had a trauma relapse, and a giant one. Like it was, I say trauma relapse just because I don't really know any other word for it, but I think it was basically just coming on the other, coming into that spiral and being like, whoa, the view here looks exactly the same as when I was 15. Suddenly, self-harm was flaring up. Eating disorder behavior was flaring up. The way that I talk to myself, self-doubt, so many of these things that I had confronted for years were flaring back up. And I was like, I'm sorry, I have done so much work. I'm nearing my 30s. And I'm still confronting the same view. I'm still experiencing the same thing. What is happening? And it's so easy to go, I'm back here. In my head, I was up here. Let's say I was, because I'm 5 years into therapy. And again, remember, the spiral goes on forever. But let's say I'm up here. And I suddenly look up when I'm going through that relapse, and I'm like, excuse me, the view looks exactly the same. I'm 15 years old. Well, one, with the way trauma works, yeah, this part of you kind of feels like it's 15 and we really need to take care of her. But look how much higher I am. Look how much growth I've experienced. The 30-year-old part of you has done all that work. She's a bit higher up the mountain. And so even though we're confronting that same view, we have done all that work. We've gotten so much higher. So I think that's something that if I can keep in mind, and if you can keep in mind, that this journey isn't a roller coaster. It's not necessarily going to have very clear ups and downs. It truly is just you're slowly climbing upwards, and we're continually coming to the front and going, okay, this looks very similar. And that's because what we've experienced in childhood, or what we've experienced from a traumatic event, or what we have fought through with depression, or with eating disorders, or with all of these different things that we're really working on and we're bravely digging into in therapy, those things are going to impact us for the rest of our lives. So sure, the view is going to look really similar, but the amount of growth that we have undergone, it might not feel trackable, but it is happening. I think that journey can feel really lonely, especially when maybe you're the only person in your family who is doing that work. So I wanted to also share a couple of the things that have really helped me as I navigate kind of those spirals. Once you find a therapist that you really work well with, I began to record my therapy sessions. This is something you need consent from the therapist to do, obviously, because not all therapists will be comfortable doing that. But for me, I disassociate a lot during my therapy sessions. And in the early stages of therapy, or maybe the first 5 sessions, I would bring a journal and I would try to write almost everything she was saying and everything I was processing down, because I didn't want to lose it. I didn't want to walk out of the room and go, I don't remember anything that we just talked about, and then the next week be like, well, this week was fine, and not be able to keep that progression going. And so early on, I asked her if I could actually record my sessions. She aligned, and I now, let me see if I can show you, have just pages upon pages upon pages of therapy recordings. And iPhone even now is doing transcripts, so I can even open them up and kind of if there's a part where I'm like, what did she say? That was so helpful, for my notes, that when I'm kind of working through my own stuff, I can copy and paste and put those in there. But I think the biggest thing is for me just being able to listen back to it. This could even be something that if you are a stay-at-home mom and you're doing telehealth sessions during nap time, I could see you having your last session in your ear, so you can actually kind of get into the brain space. It just has really, really helped me crystallize and continue as I'm doing that own spiraling kind of on my own, in my own right. I feel like I had one little piece that I was able to kind of control. Yeah, so the first tip I guess I have was recording my counseling sessions. And then the second was rain meditations. This is something I think Tara Brach is the creator of rain meditations. I should even look that up right now. Tara Brach, rain. Yeah, she is. She actually created this type of meditation that she leads a lot of people through. You can go to her YouTube channel. I'll link a couple of them below that have really, really helped me. But it's this meditation tool that's specifically focused on mindfulness and compassion for yourself as you are dealing with really difficult emotions. And the letters are an acronym. So the R stands for recognize, And it's all about kind of recognizing, like, what are you feeling right now? What are you telling yourself? Like, what is the script that's playing in your mind right now? Like, what is the, like, sentence that you're continuously telling yourself? So it's essentially recognize what's happening. And then the next is allow the experience to be there just as it is. Allow that emotion to be there. Allow that feeling to be there. Allow that panic or that pain or that frustration or that anger or whatever is coming up, whatever for me you're like disassociating from or whatever you're suppressing or things like that. Just allow it just as it is. And then the next step is so investigate. And I think she specifically says like investigate with interest and care. So saying like, where am I feeling this in my body? Like, where is this coming from? Like, did something happen? Is this something that's been with me for a really long time? Like, how my therapist sometimes likes to ask me, how old is this feeling? How old is that message? How old is that part of you? Because that can kind of reveal some additional things. And then we're just kind of investigating, even like, do you feel that in your throat? Do you feel that in your chest? Are you feeling that in your head? And again, we're not like trying to fix it. We're allowing it while then saying, okay, like, what is this? And then the final step is N, which is nurture. So it's really allowing in that self-compassion and saying to yourself, she in her videos like will walk you through some of the things you could say yourself, like, I feel this pain and I'm right here with you. Or if what you're really working on is having your adult self really come for and nurture your younger selves that are having these feelings, like really taking the time to do that. And often, like, let's say you felt it in your throat, which a lot of the times when I'm feeling panicked, I feel it like right here. She'll have you like lay a hand. I think it's interesting that my body was just like, take a deep breath. She'll have you like lay a hand where you feel it, and then like really focus on like nurturing like that part. And I think I bring that up specific to this idea of like the crazy reality of mental health journeys, because it's a tool that has really aided me in those moments when I come around the bend and I see the same view and I just want to pummel myself, like my brain starts pummeling myself of like, you don't do anything right, you ruin everything, so on and so on. And the only caveat I would say, there's one person in my life who in their therapy journey was able to name that the way that their brain processes information, something like a meditation, their therapist actually helped them understand something like a meditation could actually hurt more than help, because for people who aren't like dissociative or suppressant, they might already be so in their thoughts that like sitting down and like just being with their thoughts more just like revs things up. And that person needed like, no, when you're revved up, go take a warm shower, or when you're really like depressive, go take a cold shower, like more body work. And so again, I would always say this is all under the caveat of this is what has really helped me, but these are also things that like I've worked on with like my therapist who knows me and knows my story. So I'll link a couple of the rain meditations I really love that are on just her YouTube below, and then I'll also just link like where, I think there's a website link where she specifically talks about the method of rain. And then the final one is sharing more with fewer people. I think a lot of times for me, when I was kind of going through that journey, it felt really easy to want to kind of like put out testing shots to different people in my life to see like, do you feel this way? Like, does this make sense to you? Do I make sense to you? Am I crazy? And I think what that can often do when you're having a journey, it can like, you can almost start to attack yourself where like, oh my gosh, they probably think I'm crazy for the fact that I've been in therapy for this long. Or you're just like kind of opening up a really vulnerable part to yourself to people who might not understand. And that's that classic thing that they talk about in psychology or in therapy where they say like, if you are like, you and your innermost thoughts are a house, you get to decide who comes into like the front lawn. You get to decide who comes into the front room, the kitchen, and then finally like the living room. And I think I was like oftentimes just feeling so alone and so scared that I'd like throw the front door open and be like, anyone come in and just make me feel like I'm not alone. But when I started to find I have like maybe like 3 or 4 friends who really understand and have taken the time to understand what I have been through, and I've done the same for them, where when new things are coming up, they're already asking because they're going, oof, like this just happened, how has that been? And so when you're sharing more with fewer people, I think that can just be a really safe place to be when you're going kind of those twists and turns up the mountain. That's all that I had. If you liked this video, please give it a like, subscribe, even hit the bell if you want to see when more videos come out. I'm trying to get them up every week as I kind of figure out the equipment, figure out YouTube in and of itself. I'll link the video where I kind of introduce myself and introduce kind of all of this like CPTSD, what this channel is, like all of that stuff. I'll link that here so you can give that a watch. And the next video that I will have up soon that I filmed is specific to becoming a mom or becoming a parent when you have a trauma history. So that's something to look forward to as well. And if you're still here and you're still watching, I'm just going to end by reading a quick thing that Tara Brach often reads at the end of her meditations. It's like adapted from the teachings of Bapuji, and it's hanging on my wall in the office, and I love it so much. So I'm just going to read that and then send you on your way. If you are still here and you're like, that sounds incredible, close your eyes and I'll just read it over you. There is no evil, no wrong in you. Your true essence is pure awareness, aliveness, and love. Let no one, no idea or ideal obscure this truth. If one comes, forgive it for its unknowing. Just let go and breathe into the goodness that you